In this video, we're going to look at parliamentary systems and presidential systems. Politics is making decisions in groups. Now, making decisions in large groups can be difficult, so in most democracies, power is delegated to a smaller group, and we call that representative democracy or representative governance. Now, how do you organize that group that's going to make decisions on behalf of the whole population? There are different ways of doing it, and there are two main categories: parliamentary systems and presidential systems. First, a parliamentary system. How it works? Well, the beauty of a parliamentary system is that it fuses power in one spot. The people elect a parliament, and then that parliament will choose a prime minister. Now, the prime minister can be the leader of the largest party in parliament. That's typically how it works. Or they might gather support from a few different parties into a coalition and then be chosen as the prime minister. So the prime minister has a lot of decision-making power to run the government. They are the head of government, which is like the chief executive of the government. They have to run the entire executive branch. They're in charge of the military. And they can dissolve the legislature, which is a very important power for prime ministers to have, basically be able to choose when you want to have the next election. The head of state is someone different, typically a monarch. Now, in this arrangement, power is hierarchical in the sense that the prime minister gets its power from the legislature. The legislature could, through a vote of no confidence, remove the prime minister. Now, examples of this system are found in Canada and the United Kingdom. Both of them are constitutional monarchies. They have a parliament and a prime minister that serves as the head of government, and they have a separate head of state that is really there for ceremonial and symbolic reasons. Another way of organizing power is through a presidential system. Now, whereas a parliamentary system fuses the power, it centralizes it in one spot, the prime minister and their cabinet, presidential systems like to divide the power up. Here's how that works. The citizens will vote for some kind of legislative assembly, a Congress or a Chamber of Deputies. It's called different things in different places. Separately, they will also elect a president. And so that power is separated in two different places. The president will typically be the head of government and the head of state. They will run the executive branch, but they cannot dissolve the legislature. In that sense, their power is transactional. Both institutions need each other. The Congress or the Legislative Assembly might need the president and vice versa. That's transactional power. They both need each other. So those are the two major categories of systems. Parliamentary systems where the power is fused in the prime minister and the cabinet. Presidential systems where the power is separated between two offices. Good example here, the United States and Mexico, both classic presidential systems. There is, of course, a middle ground, some kind of combination of the two that we call semi-presidential systems. It takes elements of a parliamentary system and elements of a presidential system and combines them. How it often works is that the voters will elect a parliament, and that parliament will also have a prime minister. That prime minister is accountable to the legislature. But separately, the people will also elect a president. And so power will, in some manner, be divided between the president and the prime minister. And it is a transactional relationship in most countries in the sense that both offices need one another. Neither one has more power than the other. However, in some places, the president is the one that has the power to dissolve the legislature. So if the president doesn't like the policy direction of the parliament, they might dissolve parliament and ask for new elections, as sometimes happens in France. France is a good example of a semi-presidential system, combines elements of both. So how do you compare these systems? Is one better than the other? It really depends. It depends on how you're trying to measure them, what your goals are. Are you trying to measure based on longevity, which ones last the longest, or the outputs, which ones are the most effective at passing laws and doing things? Well, here's a couple considerations. One thing you want to look at is veto points. A veto point in a legislative system is a spot where things can stop. So if a piece of legislation is working its way through to get passed, and there are lots of points where individual legislators or committee members can stop it, then that is considered a veto point. The United States has a lot of veto points. So in that sense, it's very, very difficult to get anything done. Any piece of legislation has to go through the House and the Senate and the President, and there are a lot of spots in there where it can be stopped. In that system, who do you give credit for good things that happen? Who do you assign blame for bad things that happen? It's difficult because the power is so spread out into different places. It's really tough to assign responsibility. On the other hand, concentrated power, like parliamentary systems. Is that good or bad? Well, in the United Kingdom and Canada, the Prime Minister has a lot of power to implement their agenda because of that fusion of powers. They control cabinet and they control the largest party in the legislature, typically. Easy for them to get things done. Is that good? Is that bad? Would a system with more veto points be better? Really depends. For different contexts and different places, different systems might work better. So just to recap, two major ways of organizing and categorizing systems of government are presidential and parliamentary. Also have kind of a combination called a semi-presidential system, or sometimes it's called a parliamentary republic. We can have different relationships in them, where a hierarchical arrangement where one office holder might be subordinate to another, or it could be transactional, where both parties need one another to pass laws. How do you assess the institutional performance of these? It really depends. There's a lot of different facets to that, a lot of positives and negatives associated with each system.